We call them ancients. Throughout the ages, across the galaxy, every species inevitably found their trace, left behind like striations of sedimentary rock. Carvings in a cavern, stretching across its damp walls. Ruins dotting the surface of a long-dead world, worn down to smooth, featureless mineral formations by the cruel passage of time. Empty hallways of metal and glass burrowed into an asteroid, forgotten in orbit around a dying star. Great, unknowable constructs floating in the void between the stars. Everywhere we found them. The fingerprint of their civilization embedded in countless systems, innumerable worlds across the known cosmos. Everywhere we found the silent remains of those who came before us. Ever since our species first gazed up at the stars, huddled around campfires with our clans and families, we asked ourselves, are we alone? We invented gods and fairies, ghosts and spirits, tales and stories to fill the darkness. Benevolent or malicious, it mattered not. For we merely wished there to be something, someone out there to meet our gaze. Whatever it was, we would gladly accept it. For while we desired a friend, we would rather find an enemy than be left without an answer to our question. Is there anyone out there? Our people grew, both in intellect and numbers. We built cities, farmed the earth, domesticated the animals, formed nations and made war. We brokered peace, discovered sciences, created art and made love. Soon, we did not merely gaze at the stars, we searched them, directing our never-ending thirst for discovery towards that infinite darkness, constructing telescopes, antennae, transmitters and receivers, standing at our proverbial doorstep and yelling our question out into the dark forest. Is there anyone out there? And our call was answered. Patterns emerged in the cosmic radiation. Wavelengths of light indicated active biospheres. Gravitational shifts gossiped of movement among the trees. Soon, we stood facing the creatures in the dark forest, filled with fear and anticipation. We stretched out a hand. Our people grew. Once more we built cities, but now they spanned the stars. We made war, we brokered peace, but not merely among ourselves. We found a galaxy teeming, brimming with life, where monsters and angels walked side by side, and the familiar made love to the esoteric. No culture was the same, no people identical. We learned from our galactic elders and watched over our neighbouring young, as they too gazed up at the stars with questions on their minds, eagerly awaiting the day we could step out from among the trees and answer, yes. It was here we found them. At first, as we learned, it was merely a whisper, a hushed conversation among our peers, an obscure avenue of research limited to the archaeologically disposed. Soon, however, as the species in our community compared notes, we began to notice similarities. An extrasolar ruin of a long-lost civilization, matching the material composition of a fossilized vehicle on a planet 100,000 light-years away. The shadows of a script lost to time eons ago, recurring in hundreds of unrelated, unconnected digs. New species knocking on doors with a strange look in their eyes, offering antediluvian books from their homeworlds detailing historical finds from well before they even set foot among the stars. Finds which inexplicably correlated with ones made mere moments before. The image became more clear. We stood upon the ruins of an ancient civilization, erased from the face of the galaxy long before our nascent biology had even learned to metabolize. Cities, nations, empires, wars. What had once been a mere curiosity, a passing interest, turned into a frenzy of discovery as we pooled our resources and set out to understand our forerunners and their curious absence. They had been a mighty race, that much was clear. Even working together, we had only mapped and populated 2/3 of our galaxy. Yet for every new race we discovered, the imprint of the ancients remained constant. Millions, billions of worlds, all bearing the faded mark of a previous occupant, worn away into near imperceptibility by the milestone of time. All the same, we searched. We puzzled. We began to understand. Their empire had spanned the galaxy, from the lightless fringes to the gravitational ripstreams of the star-packed core. Their last gasp had been millions of years in the making, with evidence of their presence further back than the earliest microbial life on the worlds of our eldest races. They had colonized more worlds than we had catalogued, lived longer than we had existed, and yet they were gone. Mere morsels of their technology and knowledge had survived the test of time, leaving us with pieces to a puzzle, without defined form and more missing than present. Still, we pushed on. Then we found the cube. On a rogue planetoid, nestled in a gravitational confluence between the gently lapping wavefronts of a constellation of singularities in the empty, starless void, we stumbled upon what we thought was the greatest archaeological find of the galaxy. an ancient outpost, untouched by solar wind and grinding atmosphere, perfectly preserved in a cosmic cradle, as if tenderly placed in a silken box by some unseen hand millennia ago. The planetoid was as still as the enveloping vacuum, undisturbed by the chaotic universe around it, resting peacefully in its private enclave of the galactic garden. Here, on this fluke of nature, stood a temple of defiance, spitting in the face of time itself. Our first steps on the surface felt sacrilegious, as particles billowed up in the minuscule gravity, disturbed for the first time in uncountable years. And before us, the door. Angular, massive, intricately carved from some grey alloy, impossibly undamaged and intact. We entered with unbidden reverence, breaking the seal on the chamber constructed for unknown hands so long ago. There were no electromagnetic signals of any kind, no technology or circuitry embedded in the floors or walls. Our eyes gazed with wonder at the foreign script hewn into the metal, its creators having carved the history of this place into his own construction. And finally, we understood. Ever since they first gazed up at the stars, huddled around campfires with their clans and families, they asked themselves, are we alone? They invented gods and fairies, ghosts and spirits, tales and stories to fill the darkness, benevolent or malicious, it mattered not. For they merely wished there to be something, someone out there to meet their gaze. Whatever it was, they would gladly have accepted it. For while they desired a friend, they would rather find an enemy than be left without an answer to their question. Is there anyone out there? Their people had grown, both in intellect and numbers. They had built cities, farmed the earth, domesticated the animals, formed nations and made war. They had brokered peace, discovered sciences, created art and made love. Soon, they did not merely gaze at the stars. They searched them, directing their never-ending thirst for discovery towards that infinite darkness, constructing telescopes, antennae, transmitters and receivers, standing at their proverbial doorstep and yelling their question out into the dark forest. Is there anyone out there? And no one answered. The cosmic radiation was a white noise, an echo of the universe's violent formation. Wavelengths of light indicated active geologies. Gravitational shifts told tales of cosmic dances out among the singularities. But the forest was dark, and though they peered from their own door, the forest remained dark, unmoving. Their people grew. Once more they built cities, but now they spanned the stars. They made war, they brokered peace, but the only difference was the venue. They found a galaxy devoid of life, a lifeless embryo, with all the building blocks of complexity, yet no spark to set it in motion. No great cultures to learn from, no peoples to find camaraderie with, not even a single pitiful microbe to celebrate. A statistical impossibility, it was argued. Surely somewhere out there life existed. Surely someone had to exist beyond the borders of their fledgling empire. Their civilization spread further, explored wider, cast their net over the width and breadth of the galaxy, hope burning brightly in their souls. Yet they found nothing. With their race spread across every star within their grasp, the people grew discontent. Empires split, factions formed, old grudges became galactic feuds. With no other to measure themselves against, the species turned on itself in bloody, inconceivable wars. Like an animal trapped alone in a cage, they gnawed on their own bones, desperate to feel something. Eons passed, and the galaxy bathed in their blood. But, as with all creatures, hope is a hard thing to kill. Perhaps life was different than they assumed, they argued. Perhaps it was out there, but undetectable in its alien composition. Perhaps it was not biological, but something else. Perhaps it was even outside their ability to perceive it at all. The galaxy buried its hatchet, wiping its blooded saber on its oil coat, turning instead towards new avenues of research and theorization. Spirituality blossomed, culture proliferated, and an area of creativity washed over the shattered empires. Perhaps, others argue still, other life had merely rejected us for our barbarism and violent nature, and it would reveal itself if we enlightened ourselves and shed our animalistic instincts. Pacifism replaced aggression. Reflection replaced impulse. The universe remained silent. Slowly, inevitably, over generations upon generations, having exhausted every avenue and eliminated all which was impossible, they were faced with the terror of its corollary. Whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. Someone had to be first. No other life existed. Their presence was a fluke, a joke played on their civilization by the heartless probabilities of the universe. Their species had been born prematurely, a wailing babe abandoned in the dark woods by a mother who was too young to bear any siblings, left to fend for itself and grow old alone. Apathy set in among the common folk. Populations declined, nations faded, empires crumbled. What, they asked themselves, was the point? The science was cold, hard, unforgiving. Their models showed an emergence of life at large in the universe to be hundreds of millions of years away, given their observations across the worlds of the galaxy. Their civilization was vanishingly unlikely to survive for so long, having already lived past its prime. No king rules forever, no tower stands the test of time. Their existence had always ended, not with a bang, but with a whimper no other soul would ever even hear. Slowly, but inevitably, they were wasting away into nothingness. Hope, however, is a hard thing to kill. A plan was proposed, a solution, albeit extreme. There was a span that gave him more of time until life could have meaning once more. It was met with natural skepticism and even refusal, but in the end the facts were clear. They could not fight the yoke of time itself. They may as well prepare for it. That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange eons even death may die. We stood, staring at the final words engraved above the towering entrance to the main chamber. We had walked for hours in complete silence, reading the eulogy of this magnificent species. Our steps echoed in the massive room deep below the planetoid's surface, our lights falling upon the sparkling artifact placed at the epicenter of the chamber. A perfectly cut cube of crystal sat, unassuming, with a thin layer of dust on its polished surfaces. Instead of words, the floor was covered in drawings, diagrams, formulae and pictograms. Instructions. We fell to our knees in awe. The community unanimously approved our proposal after we shared our findings at large. The other artifacts have been recovered, and the redundancies put in place by the ancients allowed us to flawlessly reconstruct their final, beautifully defiant spit in the face of an uncaring universe. We are decanting the first of many in less than a rotation, and transferring the engrams as soon as viability is confirmed. They have waited long enough to hear us answer, yes.